Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Off the Chain. My name's Theo Canelopoulos, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Giant Swan. Thank you so much for joining, man.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming down to the space.
Of course, man.
Mate, you are absolutely an OG. You're an incredible artist. You're someone that I've been following for quite a while. We were lucky to have you down at our event earlier in the year, and obviously you've been involved in the Web3 space for quite a while. But the idea of this show is to really reach out to the mainstream as well and encourage more adoption and help people understand what the linkages are between worlds that they're interested in. So please, if you can give like a comic 101 sort of origin story, bit of background, that would be awesome.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm Giant Swan. I am a virtual reality artist, and I've been doing that for the last 7 years. Basically, I use my movement to create shapes in color and turn that into art that hopefully speaks to a human experience. And then yeah, along the journey, I've kind of started running with it, turned it into my career, and into Web3, found a space that supports my journey even more, and maybe accelerated it to where I am today. So it's pretty exciting.
Amazing. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. So, initially how you were sort of going about your work as an artist, and then I guess what attracted you to the space and how you sort of started to get involved locally and obviously online as well.
Sure. So back in the day, using dingy VR to create big open spaces that only I could really explore unless I had someone at my house. I was making small videos for Instagram. Like I came back from a gig one day, posted a recreation of album art. Yeah. Just being so jazzed up from that experience. Yeah. And then months later being invited to Falls Festival to do the background visuals for that band.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That was life kind of tapping me on the shoulder that I had something there to work with. And that really set the light for me. I started running with it, and found myself creating opportunities to contribute to other projects. I was consulting a lot with filmmakers and other industries with VR, because VR was very new and exciting then.
Oh yeah, I bet. I mean, it still is. We're still so early, and I want to get into that for sure. But yeah, please keep going.
But yeah, before I knew it, that taste and momentum was constantly pushing me to ask, how can I put what I create into people's hands? I had to create the workflows to print my art in the first place.
Right.
Web3 wasn't even called Web3 then yet.
No, of course.
But I was lucky to be sharing studio space with some people who created one of the really early kind of collectible blockchain projects.
Okay.
And they really planted the seed for me to start thinking about my digital presence as a commodity that can be owned and really interacted with on a much richer level than just scrolling past it.
So it's just the serendipity of being artists, and having the humility and patience and just the openness to actually take on their feedback and have your eyes open enough to want to sort of into it.
100%. I mean, along the journey, if there's one lesson I've learned from other artists, it's that the successful artists are always open to learn from other people.
No doubt. And I think that's across all art disciplines for sure. With my history in music, I've seen that time and time again. Yeah. This isn't a rule that hits everyone, because there are exceptions, but most of the time, a lot of the most successful ones are extremely humble and will take time to listen and continue learning forever.
Always. So rule number one, be open for that. Once I really embraced that honestly, then all of my opportunities really kind of made a lot more sense, making good decisions about things. So participating in the NFT space as early as I was a no-brainer, in that I made these sculptures digitally in the first place. I had something to say with that art. It makes sense to share it in that space too, somewhere where on the blockchain you can't remove it from the legacy of my progression forward. Whereas I can wake up at any given time and a post on Instagram from a few years ago can just be gone because of a copyright or some random strike. So yeah.
Exactly. No, that's so cool. So once you sort of took on that feedback, what was, you know, your initial dabblings with the space, and how'd you sort of evolve from there?
So really early on, I knew I had something.
And what year was this?
So it's 2019.
Okay.
I was very aware of, I guess from a real outside perspective, the space was easy to scoff at as a like a huge quality issue within it.
Sure.
But I think what people weren't seeing at that time was a real culture from crypto, like deep crypto. I was probably one of a small group of people that were coming from outside of that really early. So yeah, there wasn't many 3D artists in this space either. And I hesitate to even call myself a 3D artist, but like, for the collectors that were already there, it was very exciting to see that they understood exactly what I was doing so quickly.
Yeah.
So I took a mentality of like, all I had to do was be in the room and participate. And that's the other biggest lesson in Web3 is participation is progression.
In business as well, like just in general, I've learned that, like, yeah, you know, I always refer to, you know, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? And that's so true in everything, you know, it's a life lesson in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny how like the rich kind of cliche ones become more and more true the more you kind of...
More experience you have.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. They all make perfect sense now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you were there giving it a crack and sort of, you know, persisting against, you know, obviously, well, I mean, even now it's against the popular opinion in terms of what we're up to here, right? But I could imagine me not understanding until sort of the end of 2020, a year in this world is so long.
A long time.
So back then, I can only imagine what you were coming up against.
Oh, totally. Like, you know, for me early, even just what you could share was limited. You know, I make vast 3D spaces I could walk around in for hundreds and hundreds of meters, or the file sizes are ridiculous, you know, like
so much friction, huh?
But back then I had no idea how to get my videos into a GIF, you know, like how do I fit a minute of storytelling into 5 seconds, you know, at a respectable resolution. But that was exciting. That drove me to participate in like some of the first art MP4s that were uploaded.
That's cool.
The first 3D object saved to on-chain was one of my pieces. Like all that sort of stuff were community knowing the potential and then like pushing it up. So being a part of that sort of stuff was incredibly, I'm really proud to be a part of that. Also, you know, like a recurring theme, really, even like recently, you know, with royalties, things like that. Being a part of the early movement to establish what even inside the Web3 space understands. Being a part of that standard was a really important thing as well.
Absolutely. It's in here, like for me, and again, it would be even more so for you at that point in time, but once I started to really actively search for people, it was shocking to me how many people in Australia, but specifically Melbourne, were already in the space. Like people that I'd known from the music scene that had been in it already for a couple of years. It's amazing, like until you really went out, well, at least for me, until I went out and actually actively looked for them, it wasn't like many of us, I say us, but back then I wasn't in it, but actively sort of preaching it at that time. So how did you go about sort of finding networks? Like was it all like chat spaces and like, or just friends of friends, or how'd you go about it?
I mean, we lived in crypto voxels. Every weekend we would meet up at the whip meetings.
Yep.
That was like, looking back at it, that was our church, you know. And we'd go on tours. Like, there'd be 30 people every weekend, maybe 50 people until we crashed the servers, you know. Finding each other that way, sure. Meeting each other through lockdowns and stuff was pretty hard. I mean, I was sneaking into my studio space just to get to work. Through that, but it was like, that's the culture, you know, make it yourself and get it done. But yeah, my network grew through my collectors, and just learning to engage them, and then eventually learning that that's what the space really had to provide, was this really intimate connection between who's buying your art and who's making it.
Absolutely. I'm lucky enough, I can discuss this because they would have announced it already, but I'm lucky enough to be interviewing Jimmy at NFT Fest. And I know he's an early supporter of yours.
Oh, definitely.
How early on was that? I know he's been around for a long time.
Well, geez, like Jimmy and I now go a long ways back. He's one of my earliest collectors. He owns my second ever super rare mint.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's been on a journey even bigger than some of the artists in our space, you know, like connecting on a personal level is one thing, but on a professional level, like the opportunity to learn from someone like him, or Whale Shark or Pranksy, like all those guys were present back in the day as well. And that was a brilliant opportunity to learn from the best.
And it's such a point that I continue to sort of lean on whenever I do like public things like this, or even just in small rooms. And we even spoke about it quickly before we started recording. The market doesn't dictate, aside from obviously the price action does have some impact, but from like a market sentiment perspective. But now is a better time than ever to continue to build these relationships and networks, because there's less distractions about everyone trying to get things done so quickly, given that they know that the bull run doesn't last forever, as we've seen time and time again. But how I guess the question here, or the point here is, the importance of network and the space still being so new. You can get to people like this, especially if you're a talented artist. You can get to people like this and form real relationships through your creations, and it's such a special thing that I'm not sure has existed before.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the traditional art world, you are normally represented by a gallery or something, and they are your barrier to entry to sales. You're at the whims of their audience. And
they own the relationship usually, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very rare that they would probably facilitate anything. I even get some collectors from the outside, like from the traditional world, almost at a loss when they don't know how to engage me for art.
Right.
And they feel weird about talking to me directly. So they look for someone else. And that's totally fine too. Like, that's just a part of that's an experience that they might enjoy, or maybe they see that as a respectful way. So I totally appreciate that. But it's definitely, it wasn't just artists kind of taking their own future into their hand. It was also collectors, shaping what they wanted to see in that space. Like, going back to the collectors we were talking about earlier, like Jimmy and Pranksy and all that, they've all gone and done their own thing as well, and contributed to the space, how they want to see it level up as well. No,
that's cool. And we speak about it all the time with the stuff that we do. It's empowering the creator and the consumer, right? It's removing, or giving, to your point, actually, it's very valid. And we talk about a lot about Web 2.5 in recent times, right? Because a lot of people do find it hard to make the jump entirely, because it's too different from what they know.
Yep.
So that example there of someone being sort of unsure about how to engage an artist because they don't feel comfortable or they're not used to it because they've been collecting for so long, having these options and not being romantic about, oh no, this is the way we do things here. It's the thing, you know, the Henry Ford example that I always go back to around giving people a faster horse as opposed to actually replacing the horse altogether. I think that's a really good analogy in terms of don't scare people by making them feel threatened that you're taking something away that they're comfortable with, because people hate change. Help them understand that there's an option that can improve the way that they're engaging with an artist or a business or a brand or whatever it might be.
Yeah, certainly. Like empowerment goes both ways. And, you know, like that's something that the space is wrestling with for a long time now is when you empower people too much, they hesitate because then they're too nervous to act. If you don't empower them enough, it's not solid enough to see the long term. Feeling that out, I think that's almost project to project or artist to artist.
Totally.
But yeah, that's definitely something that everyone should be considering. But that's the real cultural value to what's happening in our space too. It's not NFTs and market stuff. It's the real empowerment of data that's undeniable. You know, like that's the real nuggets in there, I think.
Absolutely. It's like it's the immutable version of the artist's signature on the bottom of the canvas, right?
Yep.
So on that point, for hopefully, you know, well, I mean, given that you're on this, I'm sure many artists are going to be watching this. So, you know, what's a practical, I guess, easy first steps? Well, it might not be easy, and that might be the point. But what's a practical first couple of steps to dip their toe in? Now there's so many mechanisms and tools out there that are helping artists really just trial things. What would you recommend for sort of first steps that are sort of, I guess, maybe low risk or maybe not, but like just how would you say an artist should jump into the space?
I think an artist should jump into the space the same way they jump into every other kind of social media, and that's follow people that you like or look for those people. See what artists that you appreciate, what they're doing, and then emulate it in a way that puts it into your language. But don't hesitate. There's no perfect starter, and there's no better time than today. You know, like
exactly.
There are a handful of places to mint. And these are big words that you'll read on Twitter, but really it's just uploading and click. It's the same as posting on any other platform. So that part is actually a lot easier than it sounds. And when you just take that first step, the rest is easy. You know, build time. You know, time is so important. Marking when you sign that work. You know, signing it today looks way better than a year from now when you think you're ready.
Exactly.
Because you're going to grow with it anyway. If you look back at my work, for example, I don't even have my visual language yet. I was still kind of feeling that out. I'd only just worked out how to make high-end renders from my VR sculpts, and my existing audience didn't even, they hated it. You know? Before that, I was making very cartoonish stuff. But you know, like it's all on the chain there, and you can see that progression and stuff.
People love a story as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, man, doing it out in the open, and I've even done that. You know, I wouldn't consider myself an artist in that traditional sense. I have produced music in the past, and will continue to do that. But I see myself as an entrepreneur first, and I think that this space, because of that provenance, allows us or encourages us even to build out in the open. So I see that from the different things that I'm building in the space. I'm openly sharing different things, like where, you know, we're going to have NFT tickets for the next event, even if it doesn't go well. I'm sure it will, but even if there are hiccups, the point is we did it then. Still, I'm flabbergasted that we're, you know, almost at the end of 2022 and we still haven't had that many events with NFT tickets. Nowhere near the amount that I thought we'd have by now. You know, there's been so many events, especially the bigger ones, that haven't done it. I know VCon did it really well, but there's still massive opportunity there to show people you know, like probably the lowest friction from a use case that we'll see, aside from buying art and being able to prove that you own it and then the authenticity of it. Probably ticketing's next, right? So I completely agree with you in terms of just putting something out there, and it really does, going back to music, it speaks to that as well, in the sense that your perception of perfect is going to always be different to someone else's. Art is subjective. So just get it out. You don't have to, you know, feel a particular way about it, but just continue to iterate and going back to, you know, the point around learning, and, you know, whether it is you do listen to feedback from your mentors or your colleagues or whatever, or you just go within and continue to build out. But man, 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Finding that momentum is something that makes it really easy to look back on. But also the sharing nature means it's really easy to see where other people iterate on what you're doing as well.
Totally.
Like, I love when I see other VR artists attempting stuff, or making stuff, or taking workflows from any of other VR artists, and then just others, it's beautiful. Like, that's art.
Absolutely.
You know, being free of trying to be too original as well, you know, like, just perfect what we know is going to be great. I think that's really cool as well.
No, totally.
I love chasing that. And use cases, you know, like ticketing and stuff, those are great examples to bring people in. But it's also like, when you see them working, it's hard not to get excited about even further along. What's possible, you know.
100%. And I think you're right. Like, you know, unless there are artists that really want to build out complexity in terms of how the smart contract engages, etc., versus putting their art on chain so that it's got the stamp of authenticity. Obviously, that's what those platforms are great for, that allow you to just literally go up and, like you said, upload it and go to the platforms. But to start off with, that's exactly what you want to be doing. You shouldn't be trying to overcook it. It sort of goes back to what we were saying around trying to perfect things early on. Just get stuff on there and put the flag in the ground and say, this is when I first minted something, and this is when I was working on stuff.
Exactly. You know, if you're an artist that wants to participate in a market, you know, like, you got to be really aware that, you know, like an artistic journey is one thing. Your artistic career is another. They run parallel. And you're always going to be better at one than the other, or they're going to exist next to each other. Some people have a perfect blend. Other people are very good at marketing themselves, and they're horrible artists. But they find a success from growing either. There's amazing artists that couldn't sell themselves if they tried. You know, like, these are all acceptable ways to be, and completely have their own vision of success and progression. But through NFTs, I mean, you don't have to be one or the other. You can be both, or you can just be pure art, or you can be very marketing heavy. You don't have to feel obligated either way.
What do you think about that in terms of, you know, obviously there's the opportunity for discovery, particularly again during bear markets, because some of those artists may be there for money, especially the ones that maybe don't have the talent or weren't looking at a sustainable career in the space, which I'm sure you've seen many come and go. But in terms of being discovered and growing that community, is there any sort of insight that you can give there, or is it really, you know, you need to be good enough and be seen by the right people, and there's a bit of serendipity to it as well?
I think a really healthy perspective on success and what it means to work really matters. Making sales today isn't about the work you did last week. It's about the work you did possibly years ago.
Got it.
I've seen a lot of young people come into this space over the last 2 years that are discovering themselves as artists, made sales in a bull run, and are now kind of combating with, okay, is this what I really want to do now that it's testing them?
It's harder,
and totally valid experience. There's nothing wrong with that happening. But that's where they're going to find really if they want to do it or not.
Yeah.
The accessibility of funding is super exciting, right? It's very enticing, and it means you can scale up. I think learning how to scale down is what makes you it gives you an ability as an artist to succeed in any situation. So if your ideas or your passion is big enough, you can fuel anything on $5.
Totally. Yep.
It shouldn't matter like what the market's doing to inform what you have to say, because you've already got that in you.
I think this question's pretty subjective, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you feel about, those people that are really, really creative, but wouldn't even know where to register an ABN, finding a partner, and I always think about, again, I can only relate to things I know in the music business. There are many of those musicians, performers, etc., that are great at their craft, but there's still a place for at least a manager. If there's not a place for a record label, cool, I get that argument, but at least a business manager. Do you see any sort of parallels there?
I used to take the perspective of kind of scoffing at that, as if someone, like from a real outside perspective, going, oh, they've got the help and that's why they're doing better than me.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Comparing yourself to others was really dangerous for me. And in looking back at that, it was a really unhealthy way to look at my own progression as well.
For sure.
It wasn't until I started embracing what other people could contribute to what I want to achieve that I really learned how to run with that sort of support. I've worked with an Italian curator, Eleonora Breezy, for 2.5 years now. She's like family to me now. She probably knows me better than my own parents now.
Wow.
I love her dearly for the opportunities that she's helped me discover and participate in. But in no way has she ever like she's always had a different perspective to teach me. And I'm going back to like our first, what we spoke about earlier, being open to learn from others is how you grow. Like it's the quickest way, and sincerely being open enough to it is a big thing. But then through that, like I'm on H+'s roster, and they help me navigate commercial opportunities. I don't make art that's necessarily very brand friendly.
Yep.
A lot of my beings are basically inside out. So there's not a big list of brands that are looking to work with me.
Not getting on daytime TV with that.
No, but
there are opportunities.
I have people there that are going to help me navigate that when it gets to speaking a language I don't understand.
I love that. No, that's cool. It's a great perspective, and I think that we can get caught up. I mentioned it before around Web3 specific romance holding people back.
Oh, 100%.
In art, I know firsthand that is real.
Yeah.
Putting them together is very dangerous.
Yeah.
So having someone as successful, and again, your point around being comfortable with what success to you is something that people need to be really comfortable with as well.
Yeah.
But objectively, you have been successful in this space, in this craft. So, hearing that perspective from you should hopefully resonate with people that are battling with those decisions. I think the smartest people that have ever done anything that's sort of gotten, I guess, broader attention have always put smart people around them and worked out what they're best at and quadruple down on that and get the support around them to help them with the stuff they're either not as good at or they don't like doing as much.
Yeah. I think another thing to that point is like the quality of that support. Looking back at it now, I always had access to it as well. So right now I'm working with professionals that are helping me with professional problems.
Yeah.
But as an emerging artist, and I still feel like an emerging artist, but like early on, I had friends that were willing to help me, but I was so determined on my art high horse to not ask for it.
Yep.
Yeah, if you need help, just ask someone. The chances are they'll help you.
Totally.
Everyone wants to see you win. So
especially if you're doing it with passion and you can and it shows.
If it's real,
people
will
gravitate
help
to that for sure.
all the time, man. You become a magnet for it when it's real.
100%.
Yeah.
No, I love that. So that's cool. So like, hopefully there's some clarity for everyone listening around, how you've sort of, from a high level at least, how you've sort of navigated Web3 from an artist perspective. Some good value there around some decisions that you can make to sort of help you get to a particular spot. But we're talking about it a little bit before we started recording. But what's the plan for you over the next couple of years? Are you sort of taking it as it comes? I know you got a lot on, especially between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
But give us a little bit of an insight on whatever you're able to share.
Yeah. So on January 12th of 23, my first solo exhibition in Melbourne is opening.
Awesome.
And in that exhibition, I'm going to be showing my art as how I see it for the next few years at least.
Wow. Okay.
And I'll be sharing how I see my art publicly for the first time. And I know that sounds kind of silly from afar, but the reality is I sculpt in a space where it's just me, and then I interpret it through my camera movements or to making a still or anything like that. And I interpret it for my audience.
Yeah.
At this show, people will be in VR experiencing it as I do for the first time. But they'll also be interacting with it physically as well. So I have sculpture work at this show that's coming. That's very much physical, direct translations from my VR sculpting. And then from a Web3 perspective, I'm also playing with some pretty wild ideas that look to kind of show through art what experience can be with a piece of art that's on the chain. So I'm hoping to melt a few minds come January.
I bet you will.
Yeah.
I bet you will. Yeah, I'm so big on that. And when I say that, I mean, my opinion is that although a lot, content like this and people talking about it is really, really useful, and people learn in different ways, obviously, but what I really want to drive from, in real life events and helping, onboard and educate the next wave, or just the mainstream in general, is allowing them to get their hands on what this technology can do without worrying about that it is the technology, so being able to, get a, VR headset on them, or get them to touch, whether it be a game that's been created, and explain to them the benefits of it, or being able to, have them touch things and then go, have it explained to them around how this authenticity is proven, and be able to actually show them maybe a video of how this thing was minted or whatever it might be. I think it's a really powerful way to, so I'm really glad to hear.
Yeah.
Sort of going down that path as well.
Experience is so important. It's completely underrated inside.
And it's universal.
Yeah, it is. But it's completely underrated inside the current NFT scene as well. So I think a lot of artists looking at the space will kind of forget that because they don't see it talked about as much. To really elevate past scrolling on a phone, you need to get people out of that. Exactly. So making art that's immersive or a way to experience, my artworks on a personal level with people, very one-to-one. But you're like, the next artist to come along might find something that interacts with the world around them. Things like that are really important to be thinking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Well, I mean, from my perspective, man, obviously you're here, so I love what you're doing. You're a great bloke. We've had some great conversations and nights out and all the rest of it. So, you know, it's proof, obviously, we're here. We've met through Web3 and through art. So, look, man, I'm really looking forward to continuing to celebrate you and cheer on for you. And I can't wait to, you know, see what other things we can do together and have you at our shows and all the rest of it.
So stoked, man. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Giant Swan in the flesh. Let us know what you think. We'd love to get your feedback. And thanks for tuning in. Cheers. I really hope you've been enjoying Off the Chain so far. No matter how you're consuming this content, please leave your feedback either through the content platform itself or find me on Twitter at OffTheChainWeb3. Cheers for your support. Thanks a lot.